All right, welcome in, guys. Farzy Vasugian here with you for a special edition of the Chief Zone podcast. Joining us right now, a very special guest, former center for the Kansas City Chiefs, former Pro Bowler, and a Chiefs Hall of Famer. This is a former Chief I've been wanting to get on for quite some time, and very happy to have him on board. Done a lot on the field for the Kansas City Chiefs as well as off the field in the Kansas City community. Been involved in local radio as well, and a big honor to have him on the podcast, former Chief and Hall of Famer Tim Grunhard here on the Chief Zone podcast. Tim, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's great to be on with you guys, and it's great to be on with the Chiefs Kingdom. I know a lot of people listen to this podcast, so very excited to get going.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. I know you've got a very busy schedule. You got a lot of things going on. You do a lot of local radio. I know you're still very involved with the Chiefs. You do a lot in the community, so definitely appreciate you taking the time to join us here. I do want to get things going and talking about this Chiefs offense here. Very busy week, of course. A lot of people, I'm sure you've been paying attention to the press conferences with Andy Reid and the questions he's getting with the offensive line, specifically at left tackle. A lot of talk about that surrounding DJ Humphries. Will he start? Are they going to give Wanya Morris one more chance? I've got to ask you, I mean, you're the perfect person to ask as a offensive lineman. What do you make of when you see some of the struggles, specifically at both the left tackle and the right tackle spots?
Yeah, I mean, the tackle position is a tough position to play in the NFL, and if you just look around the AFC West especially, there's all kinds of challenges. And great football players playing at the defensive end, outside linebacker, both with the Chargers and with the Raiders, and then obviously with Denver. So, those are some good football players. So at the offensive tackle position, it certainly is a challenge. They started out with Suamataia, giving him a shot. He struggled a little bit. I thought that he was just thinking too much, trying to be too perfect. Was oversetting a little bit, and then guys would beat him inside. And then obviously Andy Heck talked to him about the problems he was having with that. And then he was undersetting, guys were beating him outside. So you can't live in that world. So then they brought in Wanya Morris, who had some injury issues, and I still think is injured. I don't think he's 100%. And he struggled also. So I think it's time to put Humphries in there, give him an opportunity. He's a veteran guy. It's a good time of the year to do it. I think Patrick Mahomes, he's never going to say it, but I think he's just a bit uncomfortable right now with the pressure coming off the edge. So you got to give the guy an opportunity to be able to step up. You always talk about with a pocket, the offensive lineman. Every offensive line coach that I've ever had, and every offensive line that I've ever taught, you always talk about the pocket being deep and wide. Right now the pocket is deep, but it certainly isn't wide because they're getting beat outside and guys are getting pressure inside. So from around the edge. So they've got to figure out a way to kind of solidify that. And I think Humphries being in there, it'll be a good start for that.
I mean, they've got a great interior offensive line with Tooney, Humphrey, and Smith. But the offensive tackles, gosh, I saw on Pro Football Focus, Wanya Morris is tied sixth and quarterback pressures allowed, and Jawan Taylor is tied sixth and sacks allowed. It's like, man, that is never a good combination. I mean, I don't care if you're the greatest quarterback of all time. Any quarterback is going to struggle with that kind of inconsistencies.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, get back to that point where the deep and wide thing, he could step up in the pocket, but if you're getting beat that quick around the edge, which the Chiefs have had that happen over the last couple of weeks, it doesn't really matter how solidified the middle of the pocket is if guys are being able to get around the pocket and get inside and get some pressure on him. So, it doesn't matter how good of a quarterback you are. You need a little bit of time, especially in the Andy Reid offense with a lot of the different concepts, a lot of the different things that the wide receivers are doing. Also with some of the stuff he likes to do with the backside of the backfield, you got to have a little bit of time. When you don't have time to do the things that he needs to do, to get to those reads, to get to those second reads, you're going to have these issues. So you might as well give it a shot. You could struggle at one side of the offensive line. You could struggle at one tackle, but you really can't struggle at both. Because when you turn the protection to the left, and you can help out and chip and do some other things, but you can't help both sides. If you help both sides, now you're limiting some of the stuff that you want to do offensively. You're taking some of the weapons away that you're trying to use down the field in the passing game, and it just doesn't work in Andy Reid's offense. So you got to have at least one of those tackles being consistent, And right now, Taylor's struggling a little bit, and they put Humphrey over there. Maybe he could solidify, and maybe he can make some adjustments depending on who's playing good and who's not.
Actually, that leads me to my next point, because I think that may be playing. I want to say maybe. I think it for sure is playing a big role in Patrick Mahomes maybe not finding players deep down the field, and specifically Xavier Worthy. I think Worthy's doing a really good job with route running and creating separation from defenders. We've seen him get open down the field, and Mahomes missing him by just a little bit, or throwing the ball in places where it's difficult to make a catch. Worthy struggling to keep his feet in bounds. But I feel like if he has that pass protection by just half a second more, I think he's hitting Worthy down the field for a couple of big plays and I think Worthy would have a couple more touchdowns on the season.
Oh, absolutely. And, I agree with you right now. I think Patrick Mahomes is in the bottom half, if maybe not the bottom third of deep balls in the NFL. He just has not been able to complete deep balls. And part of that is not, is because of the protection. When you got a guy like Xavier Worthy who could stretch the field, the couple of times, everybody was on Xavier Worthy for being out of bounds, but yet, the ball has been a little bit off on some of those deep balls too. So, if Patrick Mahomes had a little bit more time and a little bit more of an opportunity to step up and get, throw that ball off his front foot, not his back foot, I think you're going to see a little bit more success down the field. So, yeah, I agree with you. Xavier Worthy is certainly a weapon. And then hopefully, you get back some guys here in the next couple of weeks that, with as far as, I'm drawing a blank on
Hollywood Brown.
Hollywood Brown, thank you. He hasn't played all season, so I'm forgetting who he is. Hollywood Brown. If they get Hollywood Brown back, now you have two really decent weapons to spread the field, and now you can have guys like Travis Kelce roam in the middle of that field and maybe having a little bit more space when you're attacking those safeties down the field.
I did want to stick with the offensive line and talk about Trey Smith. Maybe not necessarily Trey Smith at this moment. Obviously, he continues to do a lot of great things for the Chiefs, but he's obviously in a contract year. And again, you look at Kansas City. I know they keep finding ways, not every single time like Tyreek Hill and L'Jarius Sneed, but more times than not, Brett Veach does find a way to kind of work things around with the salary cap. But they've got some difficult decisions coming up soon with Trey Smith, Nick Bolton, and then a couple of guys on offense too. Guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who they just got, who has been a valuable asset. We were just talking about Hollywood Brown. Is that someone they consider bringing back? I guess it would depend on how he does in the postseason. I'm wondering, do you think the Chiefs would prioritize a guy like Trey Smith? Because that pass protection, you got to keep it as much as you can for Patrick Mahomes. What do you think happens with Trey Smith in the future?
Yeah, well, I think Trey Smith's going to be expensive, but I do think that Brett Veach is going to give it a really good shot to keep him on the team. One of the things that the Chiefs have been able to do a good job is talking to some of the players and restructuring their contracts in order to sign guys. We have right now, I think, the highest paid defensive lineman, one of the highest paid tight ends, one of the highest paid quarterbacks. We got some of the highest paid, personnel people in the league. So, you got to find a way to restructure some of those things. As far as Trey Smith, I think that'd be a huge advantage for the Chiefs to sign him. For the fact is, listen, when Dave's out, Will Shields and I played next to each other for 8 and 9 years. It's great to be able to understand exactly what the guy next to you is thinking. And the offensive line is just so important when it comes to communication. It's so important when it comes to being on the same page. And these guys, especially the three guys in the middle, are on the same page. Now you bring in somebody different, and you got to work that all through, work all the kinks out, work the communication out, work all the little different calls out that you have to communicate during a game, and it just sets you back a little bit. I would love to see them find a way to keep Trey. I think Brett is going to give it a good shot to keep him. Although Trey Smith's going to get paid. He's going to get paid a lot because he's a mauler. He's a tough, physical guy. He's the kind of guy you want to go to war with out there. And let's hope the Chiefs are able to find a way to keep him. But, he's going to demand a pretty good price, just like Creed Humphrey did when he re-signed.
Yeah, it's good. That guard market went up, and that's not good news for the Chiefs. But those are great problems to have. Like, I still remember 10 years ago, the Chiefs they weren't drafting very well. Brett Veach is just drafting really well. And I know people love to, pick apart, oh, well, he hasn't done so great at wide receiver or offensive tackle. It's like, okay, well, you're not going to hit a home run every single time, but more times than not, I mean, the Chiefs have come away with some big draft picks, and we saw with Tyreek Hill and Sneed, you're just not going to be able to keep everyone, but they've been able to keep the core guys and still finding ways to win. I mean, that's just those are great problems to have on a football team, I guess.
No, absolutely. And when you have a guy like you draft a guy like Creed Humphrey and you draft a guy like Trey Smith and Bolton in a class, I mean, those guys came in and they were difference makers and helped you win a Super Bowl, right? So I mean, that's a great draft class. When you have a great draft class, unfortunately, 4 or 5 years later, you got to deal with trying to find them a way to sign them. So that, like you said, that's exactly right. You have to, you have to give Brett Veach a lot of credit for bringing in some guys who came in and made a splash right away. And there's a lot of people around the league who like to get their hands on them. So, listen, you're never going to hit on everything. And listen, don't give up on Kingsley Suamataia yet either. He's a young guy. They threw him in. I think he's got the athleticism. I think he has the footwork. I think he's got the right temperament. I think he's going to be a good football player. But, once again, it's just like anything else. You lose a little bit of confidence, especially at that tackle position, at the left tackle position especially. It's hard to let him kind of work on it and kind of get his feet underneath him, and hopefully next year we'll see a big improvement from him. So I'm not completely down on Kingsley. I think he'll be okay too. But those three guys in the middle are special, and to keep those guys together. Then Joe Tooney, will be interesting to see if they can keep him around. Does he have one more year left in his contract?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think he does too. So keep in the core of the offensive line. And, having a guy like Kingsley hopefully step up, Wande Morris, hopefully he can find, get healthy. But right now, you got to solve the problems you have right now. And the Chiefs are going into December, which is the separation time in the NFL. A lot of things happen in December. That's when the playoffs are made. That's when home field advantage is established. And like Marty Schottenheimer used to say all the time, the offensive line wins you games in December. You got to have those big guys making room in the run game. You got to give your quarterback a little bit of time. The weather gets bad, and you got to have those big guys up front leading the way. And let's hope the Chiefs can find that little combination so they can make this run in December.
I know it's not Andy Reid's MO to go run heavy, but we have seen Kareem Hunt. He's been a workhorse for Kansas City. Isaiah Pacheco came back last week. He only got 7 carries, as did Kareem Hunt. I was watching that Chargers-Falcons game last week, and I was really surprised the Falcons did not run more because they got 48 rushing yards in the first quarter alone. What do you think? Do you think the Chiefs will try to utilize that rushing attack, not just for this Sunday night's game, but even for the remainder of the season and including the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to get back to Marty Ball. Let's face that. It's never going to get to that. But in December, like we talked about a little bit earlier, Marty used to say, listen, you got to run the ball in December in Kansas City. That's part of the combination, and that's part of the way you win football games, especially in Arrowhead Stadium. But, yeah, so I agree with you. Bijan Robinson is a heck of a running back, and he was not used very well and very much in that Charger game. And look at last week. I mean, the Chiefs, they barely squeaked it out, but, they didn't run the ball very much. You're exactly right. I think they had, 63 yards rushing, and they had 34 or 35 yards from Pacheco's one run. So they did not run the ball very effectively in that game. This offense, I know that everybody talks about how great Patrick Mahomes is, and he is. And I know that Andy Reid is known for his passing game and the passing tree and all the things he can do throwing the ball down the field. But it still has to have an element of the running game to make defensive coordinators worry about having their safeties or their corners peeking into the backfield to make sure the Chiefs aren't going to run. When the Chiefs are one-dimensional, they run into some issues. So the Chiefs have got to find a way to run the ball 25 times in a game. I think their offense is exponentially better when they run the ball effectively. You don't have to run it 40 times like we used to back in the 90s, but running the ball 20 to 25 times, giving Pacheco 15 carries, maybe giving Hunt 10 carries, you're going to limit what defenses can do to you if you can establish a run game, especially this time of the year.
I wanted to ask you about the defense because they've kind of taken a little bit of a dip the last couple of games. I think in the Buffalo game, I think the defense is getting maybe too much flack because I still remember the halftime score was 16-14. The Chiefs defense forced a 3-and-out to start the second half. Unfortunately, the Chiefs offense, they responded with a 3-and-out. The Chiefs defense forced a punt after a 6-play drive, and unfortunately, the Chiefs answered with the same thing, a 6-play drive. So it was the same score from halftime going into the fourth quarter. But when you don't take advantage of those opportunities the defense gives you, I think that'll eventually tire out any defense. What's your concern level with the Chiefs defense at the moment?
Well, the one thing that worries me is they're not getting home with 4 guys. That worries me a little bit. I mean, obviously, Chris Jones is getting double teamed. Karl Loftus has had a decent year. I mean, listen, he's a threat. I think Omenihu is going to be a help. Noddy and Pennell, they're just not pass rushers. They're run fillers. They're guys that are going to eat up blocks in the run game and when teams are trying to run against you. So I think what the Chiefs have kind of fallen into this, that they've been bringing 5 and bringing 6, and we're getting home and they're getting pressure with that. Well, guess what? Offensive coordinators and quarterbacks and offensive line coaches and offensive line study that, and they'll figure it out. And that's exactly what happened with Buffalo. Buffalo knew how to pick up the Chiefs blitzes. And you know what? This is a copycat league. People are watching film. They saw what Buffalo did. And that offensive line coach and that offensive coordinator and that offensive line watched the film of Buffalo. And they were able to say, hey, listen, this is what they're trying to do in these certain situations. I think Spags, and I've been waiting for him to do this, I think he's going to have to get to another form of getting pressure. Maybe it's a NASCAR package now that they have a couple new guys with Omenihu and some more athletic defensive linemen they could put in there, Wharton and those guys, so they can kind of stand up, move around, do some twists, do some stunts, and somehow make the offensive line kind of hesitate with the 4 pressure instead of just bringing pressure with 5 or 6. Because you bring pressure with 5 and 6, you pick it up. Now you're putting those young corners in a bad position. And that's what happened in the Buffalo game. And it kind of happened a little bit like that in the Raider game, as you saw a pretty average to below average quarterback have some success against the Chiefs. So my concern is right now is, number one, they're not getting home with 4. They got to figure out a way to get home with 4. They got to maybe show some pressure and then drop and get into zones and maybe get a couple pickoffs here or there. And then the other thing is in the run game, the Chiefs are doing so well early in the season, staying square and staying gap sound. And the last couple of weeks, they've kind of gotten away with that, away from that a little bit. They've been kind of penetrating up the field a little bit instead of kind of staying home and doing their job. And therein lies, I think, the biggest issue the Chiefs have right now, whether it's rushing the quarterback or defending the run. Everybody's trying to do too much. Because once you start to have a little bit of a hitch or giddy up in your scheme, and you give up some yards and you give up some plays, then people are trying to do too much. When the Chiefs players are doing their job, their responsibility, they're in the gap they're responsible for, they're in the area they're covering for, they're covering the guy that they're responsible for, and not worried about anything else, they do a good job. But when you give up some big plays, the natural thing that happens to every football player, I don't care if you're a center, I don't care if you're a corner. What happens to every football player is you start to give up plays and you're trying to do a little bit more to try to, hey, we got to solve this. I got to do more. I got to do more. And that's the exact wrong thing to do. Do your job. And the Chiefs defense, if I was a defensive coordinator, I'd stand up. The first thing I say, guys, get back to doing your job. Don't try to do the linebacker's job if you're a 3 technique. Don't try to do the safety job if you're the corner. Do your job, fit into the system, fit in the scheme, and let's get this thing back on the right track. Listen, the defense has done great. It's been a great defense. There's been little hitches, little problems here and there, but they've got to make sure that they continue and get back on the same path of doing their job and not somebody else's.
Tim Grunhard, Chiefs Hall of Famer, joining us here on the Chiefs Zone podcast. Tim, I'd like to talk a little bit about what you've done after your playing career in Kansas City. You obviously coached at Bishop Miege High School for a long time and had some success there. How many years did you coach football at Bishop Miege?
Wow, so I was a head coach there for 8 years, and then I went to University of Kansas for 3, and then took a little bit of break, and then went back for about another 12 years. So about almost 20 years of coaching over at Bishop Miege in one fashion or another. I was lucky enough to, coach at Kansas for a couple of years, and then I coached in NFL Europe for a couple of years in 2006, 2007 in Cologne, Germany. So I was telling somebody just recently, this is the first fall since I was 10 years old that I didn't play or didn't coach football. So it was interesting to be in a fall without doing any football stuff. But it's kind of nice. The fall is a nice time of the year. I just never knew it. You know, it's 'cause I've always been coaching.
Your time at Bishop Miege, when you're, a former NFL player and, you're coaching, guys who are 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year olds, what is that experience like?
I loved it, because I coached at every level. I coached NFL Europe. Obviously, it's not the NFL, but NFL Europe was NFL players trying to find a way to get into the NFL. I coached in college and coached in high school level. High school kids, it's great because when you get these kids that are freshmen and sophomore, a lot of them don't even know how to get into a stance. So you can watch a kid develop from teaching them how to get into a stance, teaching them the proper footwork, teaching them the proper technique, and then all of a sudden they get it. It clicks, and they find a way to have success. And it's fun to watch that. Some of these kids have been able to use football as a vehicle to go to college, and maybe a couple of them gone on to the NFL. So that's been a great experience for me. But the best thing is working with kids in high school is that you feel like you're making a difference in their life. You're giving them, some structure. You're giving them a little bit of time management skills. You're holding them accountable, and you're giving them an opportunity to have success with their buddies and the camaraderie, and having that goal of winning a football game every week. You start on a Sunday or start on a Monday, and you work together with those young kids, and you have a goal for a Friday to go have success. And when you have success, it's fun to see the looks on their face that they did something. So I really enjoyed working with high school kids.
You did mention you went to the University of Kansas to coach under Charlie Weiss, who obviously had a lot of great success with the New England Patriots, winning 3 Super Bowls at the beginning of that dynasty with Brady and Belichick. Came to Kansas City for just one season, but guys like Matt Castle, Dwayne Bowe, they were Pro Bowlers under Charlie Weiss here. People feel like he had a big hand in that, but unfortunately, things just never really lived up to expectations. I remember when he came in, Dave Campbell had some success in the past in the NFL, and a lot of people, I don't know if I would say a lot of people, but some people, me certainly, felt like there could be a little bit of a turnaround here, and we just never really got that in KU under Charlie Weiss's time. To the best of your knowledge, as one of the assistant coaches on that team, why didn't things work out the way everyone wanted it to?
Well, I think the first things first is I think a lot of the guys that were on the team, and it's not a slam on them, they just didn't know success. So when bad things happen, they were like, oh, here we go again. And that's a hard thing to break. So that was number one. Number two is, I think in hindsight, looking back, I think you tried to go the quick fix and go to the junior college. And we went all over the country trying to find junior college kids to come in. A little like the portal is now. The portal is a little bit different, obviously, because you can get guys that have played Division I football, and you can get them over to come to your school, and it's a little bit easier to do. But when you went to the junior college, listen, there's number one, there's probably a reason why some of those guys were in junior college. So there's a little bit of a flaw, whether it's maybe a character flaw, or maybe they didn't have the right background football-wise. So you bring them in, and some of the guys worked out, some didn't. But I think we relied so much on bringing these junior college kids in. In hindsight, if we would have been able to just maybe go on and recruit high school kids a little bit better and had more of a success in that area, then that would have equated into victories later on. But it didn't last that long. But I'll tell you, I had a great time coaching at Kansas. Charlie Weiss is a really, really tough guy to coach for. But I do appreciate the opportunity he gave me. But I was glad to get back into the high school ranks after being 3 years at Kansas. That was plenty for me. But I think University of Kansas under Coach Leipold has done an unbelievable job. And my son, who actually played for Coach Leipold for 1 year, the first thing he told me when I asked him, hey, what do you think of Coach Leipold? And I knew he was going to have success because what he said, listen, Dad, he holds these guys accountable. If you're 2 minutes late for a meeting, you're out of the meeting. If you're not wearing the right pads in practice, you're off the practice field. If you're not, doing the right thing off the field and on the campus and classes and all those things, then you're not going to play. Accountability is so important, especially at that level. And Coach Leipold's been able to bring that to Kansas, and that's why I think you're seeing a lot of that success.
You've been very active in the community, especially with local radio on Sports Radio 810. Me personally, I mean, listen, I listen to a lot of other podcasts. I listen to a lot of national radio, but one of the segments I definitely make an effort to listen to is your segment with Seren Petra. It's entertaining. It's a lot of fun to listen to. It's very informative as well. Love the back and forth with all of you guys on that show. And Seren's obviously great at what he does. And I know I believe you and Frank Bowl, you guys do a show as well, or maybe did do a show. I'm kind of curious what that was like for you doing radio. What made you want to get involved in the sports radio world?
Well, in 1992, when I was playing for the Chiefs, Bill Moss was doing a show at the Levee. And Bill Moss then left and went to Green Bay, and they were looking for somebody to kind of fill in to do that show. And that show just took off for me on Thursday nights for the rest of my career. I think I did it for 8 years, every Thursday night down at the Levee. So when that was done, it was kind of a natural fit to go and do radio again. So Bill and I and Frank did radio together at 810. And then I had a brief snippet over at 610 for a while, and then went back to 810. But, I always felt, if I could do one thing, is to bring more enjoyment and people understand the game a little bit more so that they can look at the game and say, yeah, Grunny said that, hey, watch that 4-week blitz from the Chargers this week, and they enjoy the game and they understand the game a little bit more, and it makes them love the game even that much more than that I've done my job. So, yeah, I always loved radio, loved coaching. With Seren, one thing, Seren holds you accountable for everything you say, as you probably know. So you can't just kind of say something and not be able to back it up. Now, I love doing the shows in the morning with Stephen St. John. Stephen and I, it's more of a kind of a friend deal. With Seren it's a taskmaster type of deal where he's going to keep you. And at times I'm like, hey, listen, if you're going to ask my opinion, right, then I'm going to give you my opinion. Quick second guessing it. But he's made me so much better on the radio doing those kind of things. So, yeah, I enjoy doing Seren's show, but you better be prepared. You better be able to stick to your point and be able to back that point up, because he'll hold you accountable, that's for sure.
And obviously this weekend, of course, is the alumni weekend for the Kansas City Chiefs. I was talking to Joe Valerio. He's been on the podcast before, and he mentioned that it's much later in the year than it usually is, which I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't know if there was there's something with Tom Mahali's schedule, because he's obviously going in the Ring of Honor, but that's just the date that they put it for this year. I know you went into the Ring of Honor and in the Hall of Fame a couple of weeks ago. I'm curious what that weekend, not just the weekend you went in the Hall of Fame, but just in general, the alumni weekend, getting to see former teammates, maybe guys who you don't get to keep in touch with as closely as you'd like, being able to see them during this alumni weekend. What is that like for you and the other alums?
It's awesome. Guys like Marcus Allen will come back, and John Alt will come back, and gosh, Dwayne Bowe. A lot of guys come back, and it's great to see them. You build this friendship and camaraderie with these guys that you're with them every day. Some of these guys for 8-9 years, you're with them every day during the football season, and most of the off season you're working out with them. And all of a sudden, when you retire or they leave, you don't see them again. And it's a weird dynamic, because you build these relationships and you're so close, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. So it's so good to have these guys back and to see guys and they know, hey, listen, I remember clearly many times, giving Marcus Allen a hug after a touchdown, saying how much I love him. And, when they come back, you remind yourself, man, what a great relationship you have with these guys. And you miss that. And one day a week, you're able to do that. Now, on the flip side of that, I'm part of the Kansas City Chiefs ambassadors. So, there's about 40 or 50 of us that meet once a month. We do a lot of events together. So that's my kind of my fix. I'm able to stay, with those guys. I see Keith Cash all the time, Daniel Hughes, Bill Moss, Mike Bell, you name it. You see all those guys each week, Drawn Cherry, and you do things together, and it's so special. So a lot of the guys I see all the time, but it's those guys that come back that are out of town, that aren't here as much. Maybe Dante Hall, you don't see as much. He comes back, and it's so great. And I'm so glad the Hunt family continues that tradition of this alumni weekend.
I know you wrote a book, The View from the Center. How can people check that out if they are interested in buying that?
Yeah, great. You just go to timgrunhard.com. I have a website, and if you go on that website, the book, I'll have it signed. You can get it on Amazon and just all the other places you can find books online, and I know that it's in some of the different bookstores around Kansas City. I think Made in Kansas City has the books there, but what a great experience writing that book. I just had so much fun. It just brought back so many great memories. And kind of like we talked about earlier in the show, what we were trying to do is we were trying to develop a relationship with the fans in the 90s. And Carl Peterson and Marty Schottenheimer and the powers that be over at Arrowhead said, listen, we're going to do it by doing radio shows together. We're going to do it by going out and talking in hospitals and high schools and doing charity events. And I know you remember back in the maybe the mid 90s to the early 2000s, there was signs all along the walls of Arrowhead Stadium with all the different charities involved with. And that just really built that relationship between the fan and the player. So I always say, for me, everybody says Arrowhead's like a college-like atmosphere. Well, it's not just because it's loud, and it's not just because they all wear red. You can get any team and any fan base to do that. But what happened was this relationship that was built between the player and the fan that was established in the 90s that goes on even now. When you're walking around campus at your college, you see the running back going into the cafeteria. You might see the quarterback going into the class with you. And you build relationships. You get to talk to them. You know them. So when you see them on the field, you say, yeah, I just saw that guy in the cafeteria and we said hello, and I'm going to root for him. I have a personal relationship, a personal bond with that guy. That's what we did. So people would say, hey, listen, I'm going to go to Grunny's radio show, and I may have brought Joe Montana or Marcus Allen or Joe Valerio, you name it, and then they get to talk to them and visit with them. Now, when they see those people run on the field, they feel like they know you. They feel like they're part of it. And that was what's so important. So even during the bad times when the Chiefs, maybe in the mid-2000s, when they weren't winning as much, still had a lot of people there. And that's because there's a personal relationship between the fan base and the Chiefs that is very, very special, that was built. The foundation was built in the 90s, and that's what I write about.
I completely forgot about the charities on the wall. It's funny because it used to be a green wall, and I've always wondered for the longest time, why is it green and now it's red, which makes a lot more sense now. But yeah, I completely forgot they used to put the charities. I remember Dwayne Bell would run up to his sign after like every touchdown. It just seemed like wherever he scored, it was right next to his sign. Is there any chance that comes back? Because I thought that was really special.
I think that would be awesome. You know what? I don't know. I don't know if some new NFL rule, or the hunt. Lamar was huge into charity things. One of the reasons why we did the things we did in the 90s. Maybe Clark, it's not really his style, but I think you're onto something. That'd be great to have those back because, it's great for the fans and the national TV audience to see, hey, Patrick Mahomes, Patrick, what is it, Mahomes, me and the Mahomes, whatever. It'd be great to see that sign, or Travis's sign with his charity. It'd be awesome. That's really what brings people together, which brings the fans and the players together, knowing that these guys, not only do they care about winning, not only they care about, doing the best job they possibly can, but they're invested in our community and they're helping out with different charities, and they're invested in the people that need help in our town. And I think that'd be cool for people to see again.
Very cool. Hopefully, you never know. Never say never. Right. Tim, it was a pleasure to have you on. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be on here. Hopefully, we can do this again down the road, maybe in an off season. Before you go, how can people follow you on social media and check out any of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, just go to, I'm at Grunny61 on X, I guess it's what it's called now, on X. And then Instagram is, I believe, the same thing. It's at Grunny61. So those are really the only two I use. I'm not into TikTok. I don't know how to do it, so I stay away from it. But, I'm one of those guys. I'm kind of caught in that generation where we know it's there, but we're scared to use it. So
you're not on Blue Sky yet?
No, I'm not on Blue Sky. Not yet, and I'm not on the other one either yet. So I haven't taken a political side on either one of those two. But I am on X. But yeah, you can follow me on X. Just talked today. Just made a little quick comment about Eric Bieniemy coming back to the NFL.
Yeah,
love to see him with the Chiefs. That guy right there. I don't know if he call plays, whatever. I'm not even asking him to do that, but he brought a certain toughness and a lot of juice to that locker room, that practice field, and I know to and to that organization. I think he'd be great to have back in some role for the Kansas City Chiefs. If he's coming back to the NFL, I'd like to have him with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I just think he brings an aspect that maybe they don't have quite yet on that staff.
Yeah. I was surprised he was let go, but man, I would love to have him back. 100%.
Yeah.
Would love to see him back. Tim, once again, I know we went over on time a little bit, so I do appreciate you. Take care of yourself. Enjoy Alumni Weekend and enjoy the holiday season. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, everybody, and go Chiefs.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Go Chiefs. That is Tim Grunhard, former Chiefs center and Chiefs Hall of Famer. Does a lot of great stuff in the community as well. Coaching, local radio, all of that good stuff. So big thanks to Tim for his time. Appreciate you guys for downloading and listening to this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. I'm Farzin Vasugian. Thank you again, once again, to Tim Grunhard for joining us here on the Chiefs Zone podcast. Appreciate all of you for downloading and listening to the podcast. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please share the links. Let a friend know about the podcast. Otherwise, I will talk to you all later